So let me tell you how I went from taking drugs, drinking, smoking, doing just anything possible to distract myself, to destroy myself, being in a place where I just didn't know what to do. I just desired every day to stop smoking, to stop drinking, to stop taking drugs, and to go back to the place where I was, which was peace, harmony, feeling good, feeling happy, feeling excited. That's where I was when during my childhood. I was really happy, excited. I was just happy. I was just good. And then we moved place. So I grew up in Rome, and we moved place in 1988 during my age of 8 years old. And we just moved from one home to another in the same city in a different area, but for me it was in a different world. In my previous world, where I was until I was 8, I was happy, I was comfortable, I felt I belonged there. I had my friends and my home. It was just good. Then we moved, and for me it wasn't so hard at the beginning, but then it became really hard because I encountered some bullies, and I started feeling afraid. And when I started feeling afraid, I started feeling insecure. And when I started feeling insecure, I started looking for people who I could attach myself to be more secure. I started hanging out with the wrong people, basically. And with these people, I started smoking, I started drinking, I started taking drugs, and I became this person who I was transformed to by looking at these guys, these, tough guys. I wanted to become one of those guys, and I became that guy. I became this tough guy who was drinking, smoking, taking drugs. I was doing all sorts of things. I was like the criminal. I was a criminal. I was a criminal. So I started at 15 years old with smoking and drinking, and by the age of 17, I used to go out dancing at night time and taking drugs and coming back home at 7 in the morning, being in the bed, pretending I'm sleeping, and I couldn't sleep because the amphetamine I took, and I couldn't let my mother find out that I took the stuff. So it's 7 in the morning. I'm supposed to feel sleepy, so I pretend I'm sleeping, but inside I can't sleep, and I'm under the bed sheet. My mother coming in and out the room, and I feel this anxiety, and the amphetamine start going down, and I felt really, really bad. And so this fear I started feeling when I was around 14, 15. It became stronger and stronger. Actually, it would only go away when I was taking the things, drinking and taking drugs. By one point at the age of 17, this fear became stronger and stronger. It became anxiety. I became so anxious that I couldn't do anything, any social interaction with anybody without, drinking alcohol. And my health started declining, and I started feeling afraid of my health, of my body, of my brain. I was afraid something would happen. And so I realized, I went from a very secure, confident boy, happy, and I knew how to socialize, and I was excited about meeting new people, and about going to new places. I went from this guy to a guy where he was recluded, where he was hiding in the dark, smoking, drinking with this group of friends, and he couldn't go out to his group of friends without feeling strong anxiety, and I felt like I lost the appreciation for life. Like life without drinking, smoking, taking drugs, it was boring life. It was shit life, and I was afraid. I was really anxious, and I realized at that point that I needed to do something. I needed to change. So I started desiring a change. And so I started removing these layers. I stopped taking drugs, I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking, I stopped a lot of things in each thing I stopped in a different way. But what the place where I reached now is where I'm totally free. I came up with something. I came across something. So I discovered all of these different ways that worked for me at the time, but each time I use a different way which worked at that time, but it wasn't the definitive. And now finally I realized the definitive. So the first time when I stopped the drugs, it was merely out of fear. I was terrified something would happen. And this is a way, to stop something. Many people had to reach that point to stop something, but I don't want that for you. I don't want to be you, to reach the moment of really feeling terrified, being in front of like a disease or losing someone because of what you're doing. I don't want you to get there. So I've discovered that I created a different thing. But anyway, the first thing I used, it was fear. So I stopped taking drugs out of fear. Then the way I stopped drinking, it was out of my values. So I've been doing a lot of different things. When I started really drinking, it was like I was drinking, and my body was fine. When I was earlier, when I was really, really younger, like 15, 16, I would drink and then just vomit and then just go to sleep and that's it. But as I got older, as I get to 17 years old, I used to drink more and more. I would drink, and never get like that vomit, never get that moment of feeling, sleepy or wanted to go home. My body would be fine. I would be fine, and I would just keep drinking, but that would affect my mind a lot. So I started doing things very dangerous because my body was strong, was moving, was active, but my brain was totally fucked. So what I started doing, for example, I've been stopped by the police with my motorcycle. I was drunk on a motorcycle 3 a.m. in the morning under my home, and my ex-girlfriend was there, and she was like 15, 16. I was like 17, 18. I was actually just turned 18. And she was like 15 years old. And I've been stopped by the police, and I got drunk, and they told me, this girl is a minor, she called her mother or something. I got angry and I pushed the inspector of the police, the department of the police of my area, and basically I went to jail. I went to jail for 2 days, and then after, without my driving license, I stole my mother's car, and I crashed it, and I hid it, and then I went back to sleep, and my mother asked me, where is my car? And I said, I don't know, who knows? And I lied to her for like a few days, and then I told them, I stolen the car, and I crashed it, and I beat my friends up. Like one of my best friends, I beat him in the face. Another guy, he went to the hospital because I tried to go inside his house with a motorcycle, and I hit the gate with my motorcycle full on, and the gate hit his head, and I did crazy things. I spit on the face of many of my girlfriends, not girlfriends like my girlfriend, like friends, girls. But I wouldn't stop. I wouldn't. I just wouldn't learn. And every night, every weekend, I would say, okay, that's it. This is the last time. From tomorrow, I'm not drinking anymore. And then the next weekend, I would drink again and again because I didn't know how not to drink. I had the identity. So what I did, once that big thing happened, that hit my values, which was, I'll tell you the story another time, but I tried with one of my best friend's girlfriends. I tried to kiss her, and I didn't realize it. That day I woke up in the morning in the street, standing in the street. I just had the driving license, and I drank because I knew that my car was broken, and I didn't take my car. But what I did, I got drunk. I went to take my car, broken, but it did start, and I did go around with it. And anyway, to make a long story short, I did something out of my completely out of what I would have done, which is trying to kiss one of my girlfriends, one of my best friend's girlfriend. And when I realized that hit me, and it was like, wow, if I did something like this, that really, really going against my values, I could easily go home, take my mother, throw her out the window. The same thing. So when I realized that, boom, I completely turned off. I don't drink alcohol anymore. That's it from that day. But that was the decision I made, and I completely closed the door. And then how I made that happen, it was through identity. So the first time after that, I had that occasion, that opportunity to drink. I say, okay, now I'm not drinking anymore. And inside myself, I thought, how am I gonna act? Like, I only know how to go around and go out and talk to people when I'm drunk. I don't know who I am without alcohol. And I switched my identity, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna be that cool guy who is cool without drinking. And I went and I bought a lemonade at the bar, and I started drinking lemonade. I was just cool. I was this cool guy. I switched my identity, and that's how I stopped drinking. Then the smoking, it was long time after. It was I stopped drinking in 2000, year 2000, 99 actually, and I stopped smoking was 2010, by the age of 30. And when I stopped smoking was a different way I did that. Until then, I stopped because either some fear or because, I couldn't think about not going, with my values. Again, it was fear of going against my value, fear of doing something wrong. But this time, the way I stopped smoking, which I tried everything. I tried chewing gums, I tried to electroshoot my ears and take some roots. I paid like 300 or 400 euros to, actually was liras at the time, to do this electroshooting. And I tried everything. I read books, I read the book Allen Carr, Easy Way to Stop Smoking, which was really good. I stopped with that for a while, for some months. Then I started again. I tried everything I could imagine. I tried to smoke less. I tried to smoke more, like smoking 3 or 4 cigarettes in a row until I get disgusted. But then by the 3 or 4 hours later, I smoked again. Even though it was disgusting, I did smoke it. I tried promises. I promised with my best friend that we would never smoke again. And instead of smoking, we were eating this chewing gum, very strong, minty chewing gum, which, it would distract us from smoking. But then, I got drunk and smoked again. I tried everything. But eventually, again, this is not the place where I tell you the story how I stopped. But basically, I focused on the good. I imagine my life if I didn't smoke. I got excited about the idea. After learning the law of attraction, I started focusing more and more on my thoughts, on imagination. And so I trained my mind to imagine situations and getting excited about them. And so what happened is that day I was in Brazil, actually, it was in the evening, and I had a choice. And my best friend told me, we either go to buy cigarettes, and tomorrow you'll be again a smoker and complain, because I was complaining a lot that day, or we go directly to sleep. Tomorrow we wake up and never smoke again. And I thought, let's go buy cigarettes. Come on. At the end I said, okay, let's go to sleep, and tomorrow we wake up and we never smoke again. And unbelievably, that happened almost 10 years ago, and I still didn't smoke since that day, because I focused on the good. But this is not what I want to tell you today. This is not the way that you're going to stop your addiction. This is one way what I use, which is useful, but I found a really, really deeper and stronger way. And so after I stopped smoking, after 2 months, I became vegetarian and then vegan. I felt confident to take choices. I imagine imagine if I just don't eat animals anymore. I become vegetarian, and I did it. Oh, imagine that, and I did it. I started imagining, and I started getting excited about the result. And so I gave up sugar, I gave up gluten, but what I realized, something that I realized was that I was still addicted to something. Like, for instance, when I was vegan, I would make this vegan tiramisu, you know, and keep them in the fridge. At nighttime, I would go home and eat the whole thing, you know. Or I gave up the sugar, I gave up the gluten. No, sorry, I gave up the sugar and I went to India. And I was addicted to this paratha. It was like this thing made with the flour, salt, and lots of oil, and it was like cooked in the pan, and it was so good, you know, with the sauce, you know. And I was actually addicted to it, you know. I wanted to go and eat that. If I skipped that for breakfast, I would get angry. You know, I realized this thing. I realized this addiction. Then after, when I went on a trip on Thailand for 4 months, I was advised to do this Vipassana meditation course, which was a 10 days course where you meditate for basically 12 hours a day, each session for 1 hour. And there I realized something profound. I realized that, you know, I would sit down, you know, the exercise was to sit down with your eyes closed, crossed legs, and just don't move for 1 hour. And it was very hard. It was very painful in the legs at the beginning. And after about 40 minutes, it would feel like it was 5 hours I was there, and I couldn't hold it anymore. And this thing about holding it, you know, I was holding a bit more, a bit more, a bit more. But at one point, it gets to the point where you break free of this holding. You start flowing again. You're not attached anymore to wanting to do the thing, because what would come out, there were like feelings and things that would normally come out in a day-to-day life, like if I'm stuck in traffic, if I'm in a queue, if I'm arguing with somebody, if I'm wanting to eat something and I don't have it at the moment, the addiction thing, it would come out this feeling which I attached to the actual situation and thing. But when I was doing the Vipassana, I realized that feeling, it wasn't about the situation or the thing I was addicted to. It was something in me that would come up and I wouldn't be able to handle it. And being with my eyes closed, you know, focusing on my breath, with crossed legs, all silence, you know, everything silence, and I just had that in front of me and I had to deal with it, and I couldn't, and I didn't want. That's why I wanted to open my eyes and finish the meditation. But at one point, I kept observing, like the exercise would say, to observe without judgment, observe equanimously. A point comes where that goes away. It disappears. You don't have anymore that thing. And then you can stay there forever, for longer and longer. And so I separated at that point also the pain from the suffering. So the pain of my legs, it was different from the suffering of not knowing when was this hour to be over. When finally I've got to open my legs. When, you know, this doubt in myself, all this. So that was the thing. So that's one thing I realized. Then I was in London, and basically I was working in this organic shop, and I was also cycling with my bicycle, doing delivery with my bicycle. And this organic shop, it was beautiful. It was my home, you know. They had everything organic, everything vegan, and there were those couple of things which I was addicted to. One was a chocolate with inside like this date cream and these cashews, and it was in the fridge. It was like kind of a Mars bar, but vegan, organic, raw, gluten-free, sugar-free. It was amazing, but it was so good. And then I had these chips, gluten-free, made from like different superfood and different things, and they were, you know, relatively healthy things. But one time, you know, I was home. It was 8:45 in the evening. I know the shop would close at 9, and I felt this thing like, oh, I want this chocolate, I want this thing. And I was feeling good at home, you know, and I was enjoying. And I'd say, oh, I want this thing. And that thing at that shop, it was about 10 minutes away from my home with a bicycle. So I rushed through outside, got my bicycle, and ran with my bicycle to the shop to buy this thing and eat this thing. and I realized I'm addicted. I'm just like when I was, alcoholic or smoking, or it's the same thing. Just this is not so bad, but still it's not good because I'm here, I'm not free because I need to go and cycle to the shop to get this thing. Otherwise, I don't feel good. So I started experimenting with this, and I started experimenting especially with fasting. I would do every Sunday, I would do a 40 hours fasting. So Saturday morning, I would have breakfast with fruit, and then I wouldn't eat until the next breakfast on the Monday morning. So it would be 40 hours. And during this time, I also said, okay, I'm gonna fast, but I'm not gonna watch movies, I'm not gonna masturbate, I'm not gonna do anything that distracts me from myself. I wanna be with this thing. And so I started realizing that this thing, this feeling, that it's something I'm not comfortable with, and I'm trying to distract from myself from this. And this I also realized because many years ago, when one of my attempts to stop smoking, I got into EFT, emotional freedom technique, where basically it's tapping, called tapping. You tap on certain points of your body, and you say, like, even though I have this feeling, I deeply and completely accept myself. This feeling. So this is a very good thing, very cool tool to release emotions. And when I was doing this thing, I was into this thing, I was watching this video of this guy, one of the founder of the emotional freedom techniques, and he was explaining this really simple thing, which was when you draw a circle in a board, and you say, this is you, and there is something in this circle in you that you're not comfortable with. And what you do, and then you start drawing arrows outside the circle. You don't feel good, and you go and distract with the coffee, go and distract with the cigarette, go and distract with the sex. So that video was really profound, that message for me, and got stuck with me until the moment I started doing the fasting, and I started realizing this thing that I was trying to distract from myself. So I started fasting and doing more and more Vipassana meditation, observing my body, my feeling, my emotion, and just observing without judging. And then they would go, and then I can tell you more about this, but for now I want to tell you that I started realizing this thing, and so I started purifying myself, and I started working on myself, and I became kind of free from addictions. But then there was another element to this, which was, okay, I'm free from addictions, but now I'm not free from situations yet. So a situation would happen where I would feel something, I would feel bad, and I would play the story over and over in my head, and I would still over feel bad about this, and I would suffer. I would suffer from the situation. For instance, I was working again in London by cycling with my doing my deliveries, and taxi drivers, they would sometimes, attack me, by words, would tell me words like fuck off and things like that, because they had this thing in their mind that cyclists, they not prudent in the road and whatever. But I would get angry about this, and I would not like this. I don't like, because I was not addicted, but I was dependent on somebody else's opinion. So I was dependent on what other people think of me. And I wasn't free, so I wanted to be free. So I came across this tool called nonviolent communication, created by Marshall Rosenberg, which is an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. And basically what this thing says is that people have arguments because they listen to what they say, and they don't connect with how they feel. So this is a bit longer, but I want to try to tell you briefly that nonviolent communication, the steps are this. So whatever I feel, it's a need who's not met. So these elements are the feelings, the needs, and the request, and the situation. So four elements. The situation caused me some feelings, and these feelings, they're coming because there are some needs, universal human needs, that are met. And so in the request part, in the action part, in the fourth part, is like, okay, what do I want? How do I meet my needs so that I can feel better in this situation? And so I started learning about nonviolent communication. I started using it, in this, with the day-to-day life, talking to people. And it would be great, it would work after I knew how to use it. But then I realized that this works also internally with my internal conversation. And so I started to using it to unlock some of these energies, because basically the suffering is an emotion which is stuck in me. So emotion is energy in motion. And some situation would come and I would feel this thing that I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't even know what it was. I was just suffering for it from being there. So I realized, okay, I can analyze what I'm feeling by looking at this chart, this feeling chart. I look at all these different feelings names. And then I realized, what is the need behind this feeling? And again, there is another chart of universal human needs chart. And I would identify a need. And then I would identify an action or a request or a desire that would make me meet that need. And so this really worked. This really worked for me. But it was hard to tell people. It was hard also for myself every time to go and do this exercise, because I didn't know, sometimes I was, maybe at work, so it wasn't easy to concentrate and do this exercise. So I started to going around with these pictures, one of the feeling chart and one of the needs chart. And it became easier because all of a sudden, whatever I feel, I analyze the situation, I look at the feeling, I recognize the feeling, then I look at the need, I recognize the need, and then I think about a possible thing that could meet my need. And it became easier. And then I started using it over and over and over and over and over. And it became like every addiction or every situation, every problems I had, it would be now a mean for me to clear out some of the stuff I had inside of me. For example, I was in Rome last year, and in Rome I live in a house where I have some neighbors, and I could hear them sometimes. And this time I was doing something on the laptop, I was trying to concentrate, maybe I was meditating, I think, and I started hearing my neighbors shouting. And inside myself I thought, oh, these guys, why they shout? And I started feeling angry, but I knew I couldn't do anything. I knew that it wasn't them. I knew there was something in me, right? Because I learned with my Vipassana retreat. But yet I didn't know how to deal with it. So I look at the feeling chart and I look at what I feel angry. And then I thought, why do I feel angry? What is that I need? And I realized I feel angry because I think that these people, they're living their life, they don't know, they're ignorant about this, how to be peaceful, how to enjoy, and how to live life. I thought in myself, this was honestly what I thought. And then I realized, okay, what do I need? What is that I need? And I realized that I was angry because what I needed, it was choice. I want to choose whether to hear these people or not. I want to choose whether to be in a silent environment or not. In that moment, I realized that I wasn't in the environment I wanted. I wanted to be in an environment where I can choose. And so in that moment, I made a decision. I want to go and move out from this home as soon as possible and go to Sardinia. That's where I am right now. And so what I did, because I needed choice, and I imagined a situation where I had that choice, and I imagined, okay, I'm gonna if I plug my ears. So what I did, basically, I plugged my ears, I put my earphones on, those earphones that you put inside like this, and I didn't hear them anymore, and I feel good because I could continue concentrate. But the good thing, the funny thing about this, that after a while I removed these things, and my neighbors were still shouting, but I didn't feel the suffering anymore. Why? Because my need for choice, it was met, because now I had the choice whether to put my earplugs and not to listen to them or not. If I didn't go through this process, I would feel angry and frustrated because these people were shouting. I couldn't say anything to them because, you know, it's their house, and because, you know, I realized I'm responsible. My suffer is my problem, and I didn't know, you know, what to do, and I would just keep suffering. But this would happen for anything, you know. If I argue with somebody, you know, sometimes I talk to my father and we don't understand each other, but now using this thing, I was able to use this suffering to make a good decision for myself, that it was time for me to move out, to go to another place, and I became free from that. So what I did, I started working on this process and refining it more and more, and I created like a document where I can go through this document very easily. Now I don't need to document anymore myself because I know this by heart, but it would be very easy for anyone to look at this document and go through the steps, watch the charts. I prepared the charts, then the document. And so this is what I created. This is a process I created that I would like to share with you, in case you have any addictions, or you going through any suffering at all, because the suffering is an emotion which is stuck there. That's it. And to release the emotion, we need to understand it. Once we understand it, we can release it and we flow again. So anytime you feel you're suffering, you can go through this process and release your emotion and realize what's your next step is, what is really that you need. So anyway, I'll put the link below or up in this video, and you can just put your email and I send this document to you. Okay, so would be it for today. Thank you very much for listening to my story, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.